Hey there, Heather Bessent here, and I'm doing another one of these Facebook Lives because I've got another rant for you. It's that time of year, first of the year, where everyone's making predictions, and I just want to say predictions are for amateurs. If you're making a prediction, oh my God, seriously, why? Why? When I read the posts of my colleagues and people I know and I respect, and they're making posts around this time of year, and they're like, predictions for 2018. I'm like, oh my God, really? I thought you were smarter. You see, let me tell you a secret about predictions. Amateurs only do predictions. Professionally trained futurists that understand what the future is, we know that predictions are bullshit. So I have some notes. I'm going to rant about predictions today, so join. Okay, when you make a prediction, you are making a certainty. You're stating a certainty about the future. But if you think about what the future actually is, the medium of the future, it's all conjecture. It's all possibilities. You can't make a fact about that kind of thing. Like, part of the feature of the future is that it hasn't happened yet, and anything can happen. So when you make a prediction, you're making a statement about a statement of fact, and you're making that fact about this medium of which it can't be factual. So how can you be certain about the future? Like, you can't. So just predictions, forget about it. Like, it just makes you look stupid and not understand what the medium of the future is if you're making a prediction. So what I actually really think these amateurs that make predictions of 2018 are trying to say is they're saying these are the things I see happening and might happen more in 2018. And that is actually trend watching and extrapolation. So you can see kind of the trends that are happening in the present, and you can extrapolate possibilities based on probability percentages of the future, of what could happen or could not happen. But, you know, again, the future, anything can happen. Something can happen that can change those extrapolations. And also the other thing is it's really, really hard to get timing about things happening. Right. Timing is really tricky because, again, like, the future is this medium that none of us have control over, yet we can all influence. And so some things happen a lot faster than we think, like things reach the tipping point a lot faster. And then some things take a really, really long time to happen, even if it looks like everything's lined up. VR, for example. Another thing that I think these amateurs who talk about predictions are trying to say is, I want or desire these things to occur. And these are their visions of the future. Now, they may be experts and knowledgeable in technology and these things, but that's still their desired future, and they want that to happen. And honestly, I don't blame people for wanting to know what the future is with certainty. It's this crazy medium. We want to know. We want to know to make better decisions. We want to know to take advantage of it. And we want to know it because we're afraid. We want to control it. We want to understand how to live our lives, add a little bit more certainty into our present moments. And we also want to take advantage of opportunities in the future. But here's one thing about people making predictions, again, the amateurs making prediction, is that they don't have any control to make any of those things happen. They're observing and seeing things, but like, do they have control of all the variables to make that prediction, that statement of fact about the future to occur? No, they totally do not. They do have influence, and they can inspire people to do it. But I think they're being really irresponsible stating a fact about the future of which they have no control over making. Okay, so let's take some examples of the future that people from like the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I'm sure you've already got images of these things, you know, the beautiful drawings and illustrations of the future of what it was going to be like to live in 2000. Well, those visions of the future were created by artists and people who had amazing skills to see these things, but they really had no skills in being able to actually like build spaceships or flying cars or, Jetsons like houses or things like that. They put forth these visions of the future, and they had no knowledge or control over actually making those things happen. And so what ends up happening is you end up having people being pissed off that the future doesn't happen the way people say it is. And so people say, oh, these predictions are wrong. And then you get upset at futurists. And so this kind of backlash that I personally get, a lot of trained futurists get, is because we have a lot of amateur, untrained people that have visions of the future making irresponsible, misguided predictions about the future based in their own limited knowledge and their limited bias, which then they don't happen. Those things don't occur, which means then people like me who are professionals, who are trained in looking at the future and going into the future and seeing what is possible, I have this big bag of shit that I have to pick up and deal with. And it makes it really hard for me to convince the value of thinking about the future to clients. Yeah. So I get really irritated about that. So let's talk about what the future actually is, because here I've been kind of ranting a bit about people who don't understand the future, making predictions about the future. So what's the future? Most people assume the future is like the past and the present. There's one present moment right here, now. I see there's a bunch of you here with me. And there's the past. And there's one past moment, and if you're watching this later, then the moment of recording, which is the present moment for me, is the past for me and your present. But so there's one past, one present, and that makes people think that there is one future. And if you use this way of thinking, you think there's one future, so we should be able to predict that one future. But the thing is, the future is not like the medium of the present or the past at all. It's a totally different thing. And the way you interact with the future is totally different than the way you interact with the past or the present. You can't pin the future down. It's a swirling mass of unfolding possibilities with variables that grow and shrink until part of the future collapses into the present reality. And all possibilities dissolve into the moment of now. It's a dynamic, chaotic, juicy place with so many different subtle and sublime rules, and also a lot of no rules, a lot of chaos. And it's my favorite place to go and look at the possibilities and see around corners and just dig around to find juicy little gems to bring back into the present reality and share with you to help us make better decisions about being better humans and creating the world we want to create. So you can see it's really different than the past, which you can go back and mine the past for knowledge, or the present, which is this amazing collapse of possibilities into a singular reality. Whereas the future is this cool place you can go explore and see what different variables can do, find interesting things, good things, bad things, and bring them back to help you make better decisions. And you might think, maybe it doesn't make sense to think about the future, that I'm going to be in the present moment, and what happens, and that's fine. But actually, that's not fine. There are a lot of really good reasons to look into the future, even if that future is uncertain. All anyone can do, and that includes Elon Musk, is influence and shape what could be possible. And understanding the future helps you know more outcomes of your decisions, what the different decisions that you could make, how those can result unfolding in those possibilities in the present moment. And so when you get to that present moment place, you can have already thought about the results of your actions or decisions, not just on you, but on a variety of different variables. We're talking companies, products, societies, cultures, governments, the military. You can drill down as low as just to your personal decisions within your own community, to a government's decision to regulate something. You want to understand the future. You can't understand the future to develop a strategy to create a certain kind of future. So you can look at the emerging trends and explore how those things might express themselves in a present, in a possible future, and then you can say, you know what, that's the one I want to actually work to make happen. And so once you know what you want to make happen, this could be a goal or a product strategy or a government strategy. You can say, what are the actions I need to take, or we can take, or as a company can take, to have that possible future, my desired future, more likely to occur. Now, again, don't want you to think that you have control over making that happen, because nobody has control, nobody has 100% control over the future, but all of us have 100% control over creating the future together. That strategy, that technique that I just talked about is called backcasting, and that is a way of identifying a possible future and then coming up with a strategy to execute in the present to make that possible future more likely to occur. Another reason to look at the future is to help develop products or services, also regulation, or kind of pretty much anything that's going to impact a lot of people. You can research it to see whether it's going to be successful or if it's going to arrive dead on arrival. I spent the first half of my career, my first career, working in Silicon Valley, working for a lot of amazing ideas that were ahead of their time. VR, one of them. But just because you're working at a company or you're creating technology or creating something that will be launched in the future doesn't mean that you're creating the future. Just because you're creating the future doesn't mean you can predict it. The future is big and has a lot more variables and possibilities than the present or past. And one person or one company can only hold a small and influence a small amount of those variables at the same time. Futurists like me, and I am a academically trained futurist. I have a Master's of Science in Foresight. We have been trained to broadly look at the future, to look at the landscape of the future, and to look at these different pockets of the future. These pockets of the future that are possible way out there, and pockets of the future that are possible and occurring today. We've visited lands that many people can barely imagine, and all of these lands of possibilities are based in variables in our present reality. Yes, of course, there are things you can monitor and track and trends you can extrapolate, and there are also things about these trends that can surprise you. I like to use this example to explain the difference between an extrapolated trend and a wild card or an emergent phenomenon. So I'm going to talk a little bit about mobile phone adoption. So analyst groups tracked the adoption curve of global mobile phone minutes and predicted that the adoption would skyrocket across all around the world. You can look in history, you can look at like Gartner and Forrester, and they did tons of analyst reports about mobile phone adoption and thought about how it could impact these worlds and societies, mostly in the form of communication and stuff like that. But there's something that emerged once the mobile phones got adopted that nobody could foresee or nobody could predict, and that's because it was an emergent phenomenon. No one predicted the emergence of a community in Africa using mobile phone minutes for currency, aka known as M-Pesa. And the reason that emerged is it was kind of a perfect collection, a perfect aggregation of different trends that came together that people weren't paying attention to. So you had mobile phones, which you had a technology adoption across the board. A lot of people had it. And you had a stability of the mobile phone minutes, which you could buy on demand, and they had a network set up so that you could buy those, and then with the idea of using them. But the other thing that this community had that was lacking was it didn't have a stable banking system. And so when people were buying and selling things at markets, you would have fat wads of currency, cash that if you had just come back from market, like thieves could steal them from you, and so people wanted to have a more secure way to transact. So I can totally see it happening in the marketplace. Hey, I don't have any money on me, but how about I send you some mobile phone minutes? Great, I'll do that. And then the next thing you know, a whole new way of transacting occurred by using mobile phone minutes as a currency. So while you could extrapolate the trends and the adoption curve of mobile phone technology into the future, you could not see or predict the emergence of this new way of using this technology. And I'm not saying that futurists do that, but we have a broader view of seeing the impact of things like this than people who just focus on trend extrapolation or making predictions about the future. Futuring is both an art and a science. The future is a really cool place. I love living in it, and I love being a future. But people who aren't trained can easily get lost in the mirrors of your biased reflections. If you want to see beyond your own biases into the corners of the future, listen to professionals like me and other futurists. We're not making predictions. Amateurs who are telling you predictions are only going to let you down. So if you've got questions about the future, about future ideas or predictions, feel free to put them in the comments, and thanks for listening.